Girlfriends. I'm Carrie Fitzsimmons.
And I'm Lacey Wilson.
And welcome. We're glad you joined us tonight. Lacey, we have a very informative show tonight.
We do. It's actually a milestone. We have our first male guest on Girlfriendz tonight. Sergeant Pat Cook with the Walker County Sheriff's Office will be here to discuss safety and how you can stay safe even though it's dark at 6 p.m. now.
I know. I really do not like this new time change. But you know, I have said for a long time, real men watch Girlfriendz.
They do, and now they come on to visit with us too.
Yeah, we're very excited to have Sergeant Cook with us. But before we get to that, we were just pulling up some headlines, and it's been quite an eventful week.
I think you were telling me earlier that Shorter College actually had a bomb threat, and Shorter is where you went to school.
I did, and they changed the name. It's Shorter University now, but they just got a new president, and since he's taken over, the Board of Trustees and the president have made a few changes. In my personal opinion, I don't see anything wrong with the changes they've made. It's a private school. It's a private Christian school, so a lot of the changes they've made have had to do with the faculty that they're going to be hiring and that type of thing. But a lot of people are angry about it, and that's their opinion, and they can voice that opinion in a respectful way. But today things kind of got out of hand, and there was a bomb threat on the campus of Shorter. I don't think it was, real. I think it was a hoax, but still they had a lockdown on the campus, and they canceled classes for today and for tomorrow.
Probably following standard procedure for that
absolutely.
type of thing.
And I know some ladies in the PR department, and they had an exhausting day.
I bet. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Do they have the text alerts, I guess, that go out to all the students?
They do. They have a Facebook page, a text alerts. They had the text alerts in place when I went there a few years ago. But one thing I think is causing a lot of the problem is that the president, his official inauguration was going to be set for tomorrow. I don't know if that's still taking place. It may or may not be. I haven't heard any updates. But a lot of people had planned to protest. And of course, people can protest outside the campus if they do so in a non-harmful way, but making threats is not any good for anybody, no matter if you disagree or, whatever. It's not good to make threats.
Not at all. So what were some of the other headlines? I think we talked about the Penn State.
Yeah, that was another one. That was a big headline.
Their coach, who's been there since, 1966, I believe, was actually let go in the wake of the sexual abuse scandal involving one of his former assistant coaches.
Yeah, and last night I saw you. We saw each other last night.
We did. We ran into each other at dinner.
On the news, they had just said that he announced his retirement. So I thought, okay, he's decided to retire. Well, this morning the headline was the school came out and said he's fired. He can't even finish the season out.
It was, I don't know, there's heated debates on both sides. I mean, it's a sad situation that something like that happened, and it wasn't ever, maybe it was reported, but it never reached the proper channels and addressed in the way that it should have been. So,
right.
But it's definitely going to be interesting because I'm guessing they're still in the middle of their football season.
Right, for probably a couple more weeks at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I saw an image on the news this morning where all the students, or not all, but some of the students from Penn State were on his front yard. Did you see that?
I did see that, and he came out, he and his wife.
His wife looked upset, yeah. Another headline locally is the home explosion.
Yes, that was on my Facebook news feed when it happened. So many people were posting, what was that noise? And I heard the sirens. We're in Chickamauga, so I didn't actually hear it. But some people as far away as Flintstone were hearing it.
We felt it. Like it shook our windows of our house.
That's crazy.
I thought, and with the earthquake that was in
Dalton yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, but this was clearly not, and I think
so they have ruled it as arson, and I guess they're investigating that now. So
thankfully there was no one inside. That's a very big blessing because.
So we'll keep an eye on that.
Yep. And then speaking of the earthquake.
Yesterday in Dalton, it was a 2.7, I believe, is what it registered. My sister was actually in Dalton working at a bank down there, and she said, she had never been in an earthquake before. And normally, I guess if you're in Georgia, you don't really expect to, but they can happen anywhere.
Yes, and I have heard, I don't know if it's fact or fiction, but I have heard that there is a vault in the Taylor's Ridge area.
Really? See, I
don't know if that's true.
I was hearing somewhere in Tennessee that could affect as far down as northwest Georgia.
Oh, yes, the Memphis fault line.
Okay.
What's it called? It's called there's a certain name for it.
I skipped that class. I don't know.
Is that,
the Memphis
New
fault?
Madrid.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. The New Madrid. Yeah, they say that if that thing ever goes off, it's going to be really bad.
Really? Well, the 911 calls they were playing, I forget how many hundreds of calls they were saying they got, and one that they played, the caller said, we felt a shaking. Was there an earthquake? And and the 911 dispatcher responded, well, we've had about 1,000 calls, so yes, we think that's what it was, but we're not sure. So anyway. And did you watch the CMA Awards last night?
I fell asleep.
It was the time change, I'm guessing.
I guess. Well, I'd kind of been, I went on a retreat over the weekend.
Mm-hmm. How was that?
It was great. It was really good. But since I was working it, there was a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, and so I was pretty tired. So I still feel like I'm recovering. But when I got home from work yesterday, my throat just felt scratchy, and I just felt exhausted. So I took some cold medicine, and I went to bed. But I'm feeling better, so it must be working.
Well, it was a good show. They had a lot of live performances and the awards. Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert both won the male and female vocalist of the year,
cool.
So I thought that was pretty neat.
I saw on Facebook a bunch of posts about it, and someone was talking. Did Carrie Underwood perform?
She did, and she had more dress changes than anybody I've ever seen. Every time there was a new segment, she had on a new dress, but I guess if you're Carrie Underwood, you can do that.
She's probably got plenty. And then Katie was saying about Faith Hill, how she never ages.
She doesn't. She doesn't. She looked great, too. I think that was her first time back on the stage in about 5 years.
Yeah, I heard that this morning. Okay, well, we are going to take a quick commercial break, and we will return and talk to Sergeant Cook. Kay Stedman, author of My Name's Not Burley, is having a book signing and discussion at the Lafayette Library next Thursday, November 17th at 6:30 p.m. Lacey, I have a copy of this book, and it is so good. It's about her life. It's a memoir, and the stories she tells are just very, very cool to read, very interesting. Refreshments will be served at this book signing, and a portion of the proceeds will be donated to Friends of the Library. The public is cordially invited. Again, that is the Lafayette Library. I believe it's at the Old Food Line location, November 17th at 6:30 p.m. So, have you ever been in a situation where you've been afraid?
When the time changes, it does kind of throw you off a little bit, especially, I have a tendency, I'm not much of a morning person, so I like to work a little bit later sometimes. But when you're walking outside at night, even though I'm in a building where people are there 24/7, it's a little different to get your bearings straight.
And we both work downtown.
We do.
And if you watch the news at all, there's always a headline about downtown Chattanooga.
Usually it's a lot later than when we're there.
That's true. That's true. But still, with the time change, I can see your point about being, a little bit more cautious. So Sergeant Cook is with us tonight, and we are so glad that you're with us. Going to talk to us a little bit about safety and how to stay safe.
Well, when I got the call to come be with you ladies tonight, as it was explained to me, you were concerned about safety measures and defensive measures for women specifically. The thing that I would talk to you about, there are several things that I can talk to you about. As far as safety for a female, what we typically see, there are two groups of people that we have to worry about. and they're pretty broad groups. You have issues where there are known attackers, and you have issues where there are unknown attackers. Now, by far in our part of the country, if a person is victimized, it's generally a known attacker. Most times it is a family member or a romantic interest, or just a known person who some type of altercation may ensue after an argument, or oftentimes alcohol and drugs are involved. But according to what I understand, you're most interested in a stranger attacker situation, and I went through some of the things that we teach with the Sheriff's Department as far as to our law enforcement officers and some of our statistics, and I kind of broke it down into some bulletized talking points. And feel free to stop me and ask questions at any time. The first thing that I would suggest to anyone, male, female, period, would be to ensure that they have a safe environment. And by a safe environment, especially if we're dealing with a stranger attacker, would be to know the areas that you live in and have made the necessary precautions to make them as advantageous to you as is possible. First of all, we'll take, say, a home, all right? We all know in our homes that we have locking doors and things of that nature. So oftentimes, those things actually are failed. You fail to use them. You fail to maintain those locks. The things that, through our neighborhood watch programs that we tell people, one, well-illuminated areas outside your home. Make sure that your locks are all functional. Make sure that doors are secured and solid and not easily gotten through. Windows, the same. We encourage people to plant, and when they do their shrubberies, to put shrubberies and bushes outside of windows and doors that make it more difficult to get through those. I know
sticky bushes.
Exactly. Sticky bushes are great. All these things make it more difficult for someone to easily come in there. Outside of the home, we look at other places, our vehicle, the places that we work, the places that we frequent. You need to know that these areas are safe and beneficial to you to be there. One of the things that I talk about with a motor vehicle, and I discuss it with my wife, simple, always make sure the doors of your vehicle are locked. If you're in that vehicle, make sure it's locked. If you're outside of that vehicle, make sure it's locked. Most vehicles now have remote access to them, and when you use that remote access, not only will it either lock or unlock your vehicle, it'll also turn on the illumination lights inside the vehicle. Always do that at range. Always know that no one is in that vehicle as you're approaching it. As far as ensuring a safe environment goes, these are the bare minimum things you can do, but past that, there's not much more than you can do. Just make sure that those areas are secure and safe. Past that, something that we teach, and part of my job with the Sheriff's Office, I instruct a lot of the tactical classes for our Special Operations Unit, and we talk about something called situational awareness. And when we start talking about personal safety, situational awareness is the number one thing that everyone should embrace and take to heart as far as protecting themselves. Later on, we're going to discuss things about defending yourself. Should someone put their hands on you, we're going to touch on things about weapons briefly, but we're going to be very cautious about that. The number one thing any of us can do is not get ourselves in a position to be a victim. And situational awareness is the number one thing that we do there. And it is just simply being constantly aware of who is around us, where we are, the areas that we're going into, coming out of. We teach all the time, stay out of dark places, keep your head on a bobble when you're crossing open ground, always looking to see who's approaching, who's coming past. Before the show started, I believe you were discussing things about like the sixth sense. When something just doesn't feel right. Well, if something doesn't feel right, most likely it isn't. So the best thing you can do is trust that instinct and go the other direction. With situational awareness, we look at things knowing if something is out of place, if something should be or shouldn't be there. When we talked earlier about ensuring a safe environment, we all know where we live. In knowing where we live, we should know who our neighbors are. We should know what our neighbors' vehicles are. We should know if something is out of place, if there's a vehicle there that doesn't belong there. These are the kind of things we talked about with situational awareness, just being aware. I've had many discussions with my wife concerning when you leave a building en route to your vehicle, don't come out the door with your head down, talking on the cell phone, digging through your purse for keys. Already have these things in hand, ready to go. Don't have anything that distracts you from where you need to get to.
Now, you mentioned a gift that you got for your wife, and it was a flashlight.
Yes.
And you recommend carrying a flashlight for other women, too, when they're going, maybe they're going shopping this holiday season, and they go in, and time gets away from them, and before they know it, they've been in the mall for, 5 hours, and they come out and it's dark. So,
certainly. A light is a fantastic piece of equipment to carry with you, and I, as a police officer, I carry one in my pocket everywhere that I go. Not only is it useful for the obvious things, can I find my keys? Click, there they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's useful when you park in a dark parking lot. There is nothing in the world wrong with taking that flashlight and shining underneath your vehicle to see if there are feet on the other side of your car.
That's a good point. See, I would have never thought about that.
Do you know, and I think I've watched so many CSI shows, and maybe this is a good thing, but I will not park beside a passenger van with a sliding door. I don't want to do
Good
that.
situational awareness. Just not putting yourself in a position that something could happen. Statistically, are we going to be victimized in this part of the country? Most likely no. The chances are that you would go the rest of your life going to the mall anytime you wanted to go and leaving, and no one would ever harass you or cause you any grief. The issue is not to live in fear. The issue is to constantly be aware of what's going on so that you don't have to live in fear. I made a statement to you earlier before the show started that when I was a kid, my dad gave me a piece of information that said, simply, if you look at a place and say, I wouldn't go in there with a gun, or without a gun, then don't go in there with one because you're looking for trouble. If you take chances, if you roll the dice, then eventually you're going to lose. And it's always smart just to play it safe, just to stay away from areas that something bad could happen. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we don't go park in dark spots. Where do you always want to park? Right next to the light, right to the light pole, mm-hmm. so you're well illuminated. Those are good practices to use all the time that keep you safe.
And we talked about too about how some women and men, will run in the park by themselves.
Yes.
Not just in the daytime, but at dusk when it's
certainly
starting to get darker, especially now. So, what would you say to them?
Well, the thing that I would say to them is the situational awareness again, being aware of where you are. If you're running in an area where your vision is limited because of light or confined spaces, there are multiple safety risks, and we're not just talking about from an attacker. If you run in the dark, you risk injuring yourself, mm-hmm. stepping on something, tripping over something. I wouldn't suggest anybody do that. If someone wants to run in the park, and they're nothing against the park, and the National Park Service does an excellent job of patrolling it. But any rural area like that, if you need to run, my suggestion is always run with a friend. There's strength in numbers. Mm-hmm. Always have someone else with you. Where we talked earlier about establishing a safe or defensive area to live in, I know we have great numbers of women that live alone. And the things that I say to them are establish patterns so that people know where you are and know what you're doing. Do things in groups. Do things, if you're going to the mall shopping, go with a friend. Don't go alone. If you have to go alone, the situational awareness. Always park in a good spot. Don't walk out of the building by yourself. How many times do you see people leave a building armful of bags just on their own? Mm-hmm. Does it take 5 minutes to wait till the next group of shoppers goes out and go out in a group? You may not be together, but you're in a group. Mm-hmm. And that is something that is a deterrent to anybody who's set on doing you harm. These are the kinds of things that and really they're just common sense. They're common sense. It doesn't take a lot of thinking power.
We have a caller.
Have a caller.
Hi, caller. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to ask him to do something. Now I'm going to hang up so I can hear better.
Okay.
This is a very interesting topic tonight. You hear people say, don't go to your door if you don't recognize who's there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if she was trying to get me on or off.
I was trying to turn the volume up.
Okay. But then again, you hear people that get broken into because they don't go to the door and they think nobody's home. So so they break in on them anyway. So I want to hang up and let him address that if you didn't mind.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
I think the question was, if someone is knocking at the door and you don't know who they are, do you answer it? Do you not answer it? It would be hard to say. My personal thoughts would be, turn on the porch light. If it's somebody that's up to no good, most likely once you illuminate what's in the darkness, it's going to flee away. I would equate that to a cockroach. You know, they'll come out in the dark, you turn on a light, and they scurry for cover. And people who are intent on doing harm to others are much the same. Turn on the lights, and by all means, if there is someone knocking on your door and it's uncomfortable, call 911. That's what we're here for. The sheriff's department is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Rain, snow, sunshine, doesn't matter. If you call us, we're coming. So that's my first argument to that is call 911 and get somebody on the way that can deal with the problem if it is a problem. If it isn't a problem, if it's a long-lost relative who's broken down in the road, it's easy enough to explain once law enforcement gets on the scene. If it's somebody that's up to no good, we'll give them a ride.
You could maybe talk through the door too until you figure out.
Well, certainly
what
you
they're
can.
wanting. And
Certainly you can.
the Home Alone scene comes to mind where he's got the pot full
Yes.
of the firecrackers and he sets it on fire because somebody's at the door and it starts making noise or whatever. So if you don't have a dog or
going along
anything.
with that, a lot of people are about to be out of town for the holidays.
Certainly.
What would you recommend they do to make sure their house is safe?
Well, first of all, I would suggest if you live in the county or in the cities either, call your local law enforcement agencies and do what we call an extra patrol form, which means you notify the law enforcement agency that you're going to be away from home. They'll ask you what vehicles should be in the driveway. They'll ask for tag numbers. We file those forms with our patrol division, and then our sector deputies, which are the radio cars that are answering calls, while they're patrolling, they stay in those areas and they ride those areas to make sure no one is in and around your home. The next thing is we always suggest putting televisions and lights and things like that on timers so that they come on at different times. Nothing will scare a burglar away like knowing the TV just came on in the living room. That's an indication that somebody's in the house, whether they are or not. Those things are great. They're inexpensive. Any hardware store will have timers that will bring these things on and off. I would definitely invest in things of that nature. And finally, getting back to where we talked about having a safe environment, if you know your neighbors, and they're trustworthy neighbors, they're the kind of neighbors you enjoy having, by all means let them know that you're going to be gone. Ask the guy next door who's you have cookouts with, hey, keep your eyes on my place because I'm not going to be home.
Yes,
for
and my
holidays.
neighbor next door who I have cookouts with actually sells ammo for a living. So
She wants her neighbor watching her house.
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
What
I
about
do.
stopping your mail or having someone pick it up so people don't see newspapers or mail in your
Yeah,
mailbox?
that's easy enough to do. You call the Postal Service, just let them know that you want to cease delivery between certain dates, and then you can go by the post office, your local post office, wherever you live, and they'll hold your mail. You can go pick it up. Same as if you have a newspaper delivered, call your newspaper service, tell them don't be dumping 6 newspapers in my front yard because that's a telltale sign. Those are the things that and they're simple enough to do. They're just smoke screens to smoke people off of your residence. And as well as anything, we encourage everyone to have a residential alarm. That is a valuable deterrent, and I know several people who, for whatever reason, feel like they can't afford the alarm, but they have called alarm companies and gotten the signs and put them in the yard anyway. So that's, maybe that may be just nothing more than peace of mind, but it does seem to.
Well, and now they're
something else
getting
you
so
can do.
high tech. I think they even have webcams that attach to your
Yes.
security
I've
system,
seen
so
it
you
on
can see what's going on.
Comcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to know that. Now, another thing we mentioned too, and we talked a little bit before the show, is social media and the posts
Yes.
that people make and how it can sometimes inadvertently invite
Yes.
trouble to them.
Yes. With communication technology being what it is now, we all have our Facebook friends and our MySpace friends, and we think they're all friends. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't, and sometimes they're friends that can see what you're doing because you're a friend of a friend
Right.
may not be that nice. So many times, we get so complacent with entering things on Facebook because we're bored and there's nothing else to do that we transmit information like, well, getting ready to leave on vacation for a week. Or I think you mentioned somebody earlier about, gosh, you know, it's tough working here alone at night.
Yeah, don't say that.
Yeah, that's asking for
safe.
trouble. That is asking for trouble. And especially when we're dealing with young ladies who may, for whatever reason, have attracted an unwanted admirer who tends to want to do what we call stalking. That gives a lot of information. And sometimes the other information tidbits that are given, you may discuss on Facebook who your new favorite guy friend is that might irritate somebody like that.
Yes.
All of these things are intelligence tidbits of information that someone can use against you. And I don't want to give away too many trade secrets, but we're the sheriff's office. We have an investigative unit. And if you think for a minute that if we have a suspect, we don't pull up their Facebooks and MySpace and read where they are and what they're doing and who they're doing it with, you'd be gravely mistaken, because it's an excellent intelligence tool. And it's free and it's open. There is no restriction on it.
And you brought up a great point, too. A friend of a friend. Sometimes people think their settings are private, but even though theirs might be, they might be sharing information or posting on someone else's wall, and that third-party friend can see what they're doing and everyone's
Facebook
response.
changes their privacy settings all the time, so you definitely have to be on top of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All these things are, once you put any piece of information on a computer, it becomes susceptible to some person being able to get to it. Remember, the computer, the internet, Facebook were all invented by people. And if a person can invent it, whatever safety mechanism they put on it, another person can circumvent that and get to it. So this information that we put out there thinking only my friends can see this, no. It's available to anybody that wants it. And with very little bit of intelligence and ability, it's available to anyone that wants it.
You know how people can check in now to places? Some people check in to their homes.
Which is not safe because it gives a
their
general GPS coordinate.
Right. So, I mean, especially if you don't want people knowing where you live.
And the best thing I think with check-ins are just check in at the places where you're in groups. I mean, don't check in at the mall by yourself, or maybe going for a jog in the park by yourself.
Right.
Don't post that.
Right. And then some people too give their phone numbers and other very private information. They just don't seem to have a sense of.
Well, and people can, working in public relations, you can put certain keywords in your search. And I've noticed a lot of high school students, they'll mention the place where I work in a tweet, and they don't understand because their tweets are protected how we can see that. But nothing is really private if it's online.
Well, my employer now, before they hired me, she told me, she said, we did look at your Facebook. We did check you out, and she does that for everyone she hires, and a lot of companies do. And in college even, we learned that there are these companies hired that even though and this is kind of getting off topic a little bit, but talking about Facebook, even though your settings are private, these companies have access to get into it and to see what you're displaying to your friends.
See if you could be a potential employee.
So, I mean, you definitely do want to be careful about what you post. But
sorry. Say you are in a confrontation. I know we talked about you don't ever want it to get to that point. You want to be aware of your surroundings. What can you do?
Well, first of all, Georgia law provides that any person, not a police officer, but any person, has the right and the authority to resist unlawful force. Georgia law further states that any person resisting unlawful force has no duty to retreat from the ground they occupy, which in layman's terms means not just in your home or in your car, but standing on a street corner. If you're assaulted or attacked by somebody bringing unlawful force, you have the authority and the right to resist that force with force. Okay? Now,
that means give it your all. Give it your all.
And don't go to a second location, right? I always hear that. If you are kidnapped, you don't want to go to a second location.
Well, my argument to anyone would be if someone puts their hands on you, at that point you have the right, the lawful right, to defend yourself. Now, without taking too much legal liability on myself and the sheriff's department, as far as giving advice about force. I'm sorry, you got a call?
Yeah. Go ahead, caller. Hello?
I just want to thank you for taking my call, first of all, and let you know that it's a very good program tonight, and I'm so glad that the sergeant is talking about the things that he is. I have a daughter who works downtown, and my fear is that she will come out of the building in the dark and someone will attack her, especially with all the problems that Chattanooga is having. But my question is, does the sheriff's office offer self-defense classes? I'll ask that question, if they have self-defense classes for young women. And the other thing is, if he knows the number for the sheriff's department, that's a non-emergency 911 call. I'm going to hang up and listen, and thank you so much for the program
Thank you for
tonight.
watching.
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, if you need to call the sheriff's office, 911 calls do not come through to us. They go to the Emergency Operations Center at Rock Spring. The sheriff's office number is area code 706-638-1909, and that will put you through to our operators there. If you need information or you need to make contact with the jail or anything of that nature, if you need to call the sheriff, that would be the number you'd want to call. As far as the sheriff's department providing training for the public, at this time, no. There are things in the works that in the future we may be able to provide that, depending on some things are in negotiation right now. The sheriff does support us doing training for the public, and what he has talked about thus far has been a support for us doing some firearm safety for the public, as far as safe handling, and possibly even in the future a concealed carry class for people who get firearms permits and carry lawfully. The problem that we see is that toward that end in the state of Georgia is that the permit is very easy to get, and there's very little discussion about the legal liability of carrying a weapon, which was one of the things I was going to, if we could get to it, we're going to get to it later. But the permit is not a blanket permission to do what you want to do with a firearm, and there's a lot of legal liability that goes with it. But without getting too far off track, right now we do not offer any kind of public training, but we hope to be able to do that within the next few years, if at all possible. We're working towards that goal.
That's great.
Another thing we talked about before the show, and I think that the caller mentioned that she had a relative who works downtown.
Yes.
You said something about self-defense classes, safety classes, and women will go maybe one time and then they don't brush up on what they've learned, or they kind of forget what they've learned.
A self-defense class, as far as using your hands or an improvised weapon or an impact weapon, it's a fighting class. That's what it comes down to. We as law enforcement officers, we have to retrain on those things every year. We have to continually train. A person going to a self-defense class one time and then feeling competent to go out and protect themselves is a misnomer. It's misleading, and really it's doing no service to the person that's gone through the class. Great numbers of people will offer these classes one time for an exorbitant amount of money. They go through it, and people leave with an overly inflated sense of confidence that if these things aren't continually used, if you don't practice, then that's a perishable skill. It goes away, and then it's not functional if you need it.
All right. Hello, caller. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to the officer there and just thank the boys in blue for what they do. I don't think that the public, people in public positions, that the credit that they have. Now, I work in school systems, and just real proud of what the officer there is doing. And thank you to Gurlfriendz for having him on tonight, and just thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
See, we got another male caller for our male guest.
Real men watch Gurlfriendz.
Hot dog.
Now, you mentioned improvised weapons. What do you mean by that?
Well, one of the things that I will say is that there are a great number of things that you ladies carry with you that are outstanding weapons if somebody was to come and put hands on you in an unwanted manner. I mentioned earlier about crossing a parking lot with your keys. You know, a key is an excellent defense weapon. There are many different types of key chains, a ballpoint pen, a fingernail file. These are fantastic weapons when used appropriately in defense of self. And the problem with all these are the fact that you have to allow someone to get within range to touch you, to use that as a defensive mechanism. We have in the past, myself privately, in my private life with family members and family of law enforcement, we've done some improvised training for them, and the things that we teach are simple and fast. One of the things I was going to say earlier about the self-defense classes, many times these are martial arts based classes, and many times they deal with very complex moves that have to be repeatedly trained on. The best self-defense mechanisms are things that are fast, that are easy to remember, that target large areas of the body, so you don't have to be very precise about pressure points and things of that nature. All those things are easily lost. When you couple the things that ladies will carry with them that are easily within their hand reach, and apply that to impacts in what we call soft tissue areas of the body, and repeated attacks, repeated blows to those areas, they will change somebody's mind about trying to do you harm. And when we talk about soft tissue areas, we talk specifically about areas in the throat, in the face, nasal membranes, the eyes, all of these areas. If you attack the head, the body is going to follow where the head goes. So these are things that I have taught in the past and that I would recommend to anyone. If you're looking for a self-defense class, look for classes that show you how to target those areas. If somebody wants to teach you a whole lot of judo throws and joint manipulation, those are the things that we use to make an arrest, to incapacitate someone to get them in cuffs. You don't need that. You need something that's going to teach you to attack in multiple blows, to get somebody off of you, to disorient them or disable them long enough for you to get away.
Right, and we even talked about small weapons, like I think about pepper spray or, stun guns, I don't know what you call them, things like that. But the problem with those are, if you're not fast enough, the attacker can use that on you.
Right.
So you have to be really careful.
Well, there again, moving on to an intentional weapon system, and what you're talking about are what we call less lethal weapons.
Right.
These are weapons that are intended to cause pain and to disable long enough for you to break contact and leave, and on up to lethal weapons, people who carry firearms, for instance. There again, training is essential. If you carry pepper spray, know that pepper spray is an indiscriminate weapon. Wind will affect how important or how accurate your shot is. If you spray into the wind, you're going to wear more of it than the aggressor is going to wear. I have been in dozens of pepper spray instances as a law enforcement officer, and I have never walked away from a pepper spray incident that I did not get it just as bad as the guy we were trying to put in jail got it. Of course, that may be intentional on the part of other police officers too, I don't know. But it's an indiscriminate weapon. It is not surgical. The stun gun that you're speaking about, there again, just like these other improvised weapons we're talking about, you have to be within range to touch that aggressor to use it. I am a taser instructor for the sheriff's office, and one option in the less lethal market is the civilian model taser. It works in the same manner as a law enforcement taser does, with the exception that it's a fire and forget weapon. The tasers that we carry, when we deploy them, they fire in a 5-second burst to incapacitate an aggressor for us to make an arrest. The civilian model taser, when you use it, fires for a 15-second charge, and it's designed to fire it, lay it down, and run, to incapacitate your aggressor for 15 seconds while you put distance between you and them, between them and you, between you and the threat. The plus of that is that if you use it and you have to file a police report that you used it, you send a copy of that report to Taser and they send you a new unit. So the $350 Taser that you left laying on the ground to run away, Taser's going to make it good for you, so you can get that back.
That's good to know. Now, you guys actually have to get tased yourselves, right?
That is our departmental policy. The Taser Instructor Corps got together and made the decision that once we went to blanket issue of that as a weapon system, that if you were going to carry it, you had to take an exposure. So
I actually saw something, and I don't know how popular it still is, but I believe out west they were actually having taser home parties. You would go. I don't know. It didn't catch on apparently, but
I don't
wondered.
think I would want to go.
No. So a key though, maybe an ink pen, and going for the soft tissue is maybe what they would have at their hands.
what you have in your hands, you know, some of the magazines you ladies like to read, you know, have them around my house. My wife, Red Book, Southern Living, things. They all tend to be very thick magazines. Those rolled up into a tight stick make an excellent impact weapon. Anything that you can carry in your hands, if you can attack that soft tissue, it's going to affect their ability to continue their attack.
When I went through my self-defense class, I understand what you're saying about, you know, if you don't use it on a regular basis, it's easy to forget.
Yes.
And honestly, even if you do, I think for me it would be easy to freeze up, you know, and forget it, you know, when I'm in the middle. Hopefully I'll never have that happen. But I remember the instructor saying to go for the nose and aim down and punch up so that the whatever will, I mean, it's the sensitive about punching.
The bridge of your nose,
Yeah, the
I
bridge
guess?
of your nose, like punching it up because somehow it's connected to it. It could do some damage, he said.
Yes, it can. You can break that cartilage and drive it back into the skull. The thing to remember about that is, without getting too caught up into one specific type of strike, is to understand that the head is covered with pressure points. And those pressure points are direct to your nervous system. And when you strike these, it produces much more pain versus the effort it was to get there. And as I said earlier, if you control the head, the body goes with it. Therefore, if you can strike into the face that pushes the head back, the hands are going to break loose, and their body's going to follow where the head's going. That's the reason that we try to emphasize simple moves that target large areas. There are so many pressure points that we can discuss that are in the forearms and places that you have to get a thumb in there and work it, and it produces excruciating pain with no lasting injury. But it takes a long time to master it. You want things that are fast, that are what we call dumb skill. It doesn't take a lot to remember it. Strike these soft tissue areas, strike into the throat, to the nose, to the eyes, you know, without being too graphic.
I was going to ask that. I was going to take one for the team. But, I mean, I'm sure there's somebody sitting at home saying, if somebody's coming at you, do you go for the eyes and the nose, or do you go for the groin? I mean, what's the...
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Well, here's what I would tell you. Number one, nobody ever throws one punch and stops a fight. It doesn't happen. And there is science to fighting. Okay, and the science is this: a multiple-pronged attack with multiple shots.
Hi, caller, go ahead.
Hey, y'all, this is Randy from Rocky Face. I just want to say y'all have a great topic tonight. I think one thing that gets overlooked is the way the economy's going with our government and the current administration not doing anything to create jobs. I think crime's only going to go up because of that. I just think it's real important people know about the police services and some self-defense. And I just want to say y'all doing a great job tonight, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and kind of on that same note, but the economy could, you know, potentially cause maybe an increase in crime statistically. But what were you saying about the, I guess, the best places to go for the most impact?
Well, what I was going to say, if you break down the science of the human body, physiology, psychology, the human brain thinks in even numbers. Okay, we think in 2s and 4s and 6s. We teach when we attack to attack in odd numbers, attack in 3s and 5s and 7s, and hit in multiple strikes and hit multiple areas. Apparently, I've gotten her tickled. When you make these strikes, strike multiple areas along with the head. You're talking about striking the groin. Yeah, that's an attention getter. There's no way around it. If it's a male aggressor, that's an attention getter. But in the groin area, not just the specific area that you're speaking of, there are a large number of pressure points. And inside of the thighs, there are pressure points there. Outside the thighs, there are pressure points, things called like the common peroneal. These go to direct nerve impulses that are going to send excruciating amounts of pain to the brain without really causing a lasting injury.
What about a nice kick in the shin?
Well, and it's only on the,
It's excellent.
it's really only on the movies where they take one shot and the guy
Yeah.
falls down for
Yeah,
like
well,
5
yeah, of
minutes and he never
course.
gets back up. It doesn't
No,
happen
it doesn't
that way.
work that way. It doesn't work that way.
Now, should people, when I went through my self-defense class, they were all like, you need to say no. I mean, but really, who's gonna, I mean, if you're trained to say no to the attacker, then okay, but I just want to yell, help. So should people yell? I mean,
We teach, in law enforcement, we teach to verbalize when we're in a confrontation. And it does multiple things. It draws attention to what's going on. It makes witnesses of other people that are around. Relate back to law enforcement. We have to train in firearms. The things that we train on the firing line when we're shooting, we train the deputies to loudly announce, Sheriff's Department, put the gun down, stop what you're doing. Is it going to have an effect on the aggressor? Hopefully they'll quit. But as a peace officer, I am certified to understand that if I see someone with a gun committing a violent crime, they have escalated to the point that I'm authorized by Georgia, by the U.S. Constitution, to use what force is necessary to protect that third party and prevent a forcible felony. Now, to a layman watching, if I draw a weapon and shoot someone, was I doing my job or did I execute them? We're making witnesses of people so they understand what we're doing.
right.
And it's the same thing in the civilian world. Make witnesses of people. Stop, leave me alone. Later on, police are taking a report. If you want it, if you beat him back. The other lady coming out of the store was saying, I heard that young lady screaming, leave me alone, get off me, stop, quit, help, get away from me. Whatever, you're making witnesses of other people, and you're drawing attention to it. When you start screaming, whoever's trying to hurt you is going to know other people are looking. And that may be enough to get them to break contact and leave.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about following, because Carrie had an experience where she felt like she might have been followed, and also, impersonating police officers. That happens occasionally. You hear a story about that. What can you recommend?
Well, first of all, if you're being followed, say in your vehicle, which was the instance that you gave, you're being followed in your vehicle, my suggestion is once you become aware of it, number one, never go home. Never show anyone where you live. Stay in well-populated areas. You can always do the old take the first right, take the next right, take the next right, and drive a box around to see if they're following you. In today's era of immediate communication, call 911 and tell them, I'm being followed by somebody. This is the road I'm on. This is the vehicle I'm on. This is what they're driving. Please start a sheriff's car or a police car or a state trooper towards me. I want to meet with them. The instance that you're giving concerning people impersonating police officers, we've had instances of that in Walker County. We've made arrests on it in Walker County. We've sent people to prison for it. If you're being blue lighted by a vehicle, if you feel like there's something wrong, a blue light's come on, you're getting stopped. Always, if it doesn't feel right, call 911. I'm so-and-so. I'm driving this kind of car. This is my tag number. This is the road I'm on. There's a vehicle with blue lights trying to stop me. Is this legitimate? Because when you're calling 911, then you're talking to the dispatchers that should be talking with that law enforcement unit if it's legitimate. Obviously in Walker County, if you're being stopped, you should see either a marked Georgia State Patrol car, a marked Sheriff's Department car, a marked city police unit if you're within one of the cities in Walker County. The same for Catoosa, the same for all of our surrounding counties. With the sheriff's office, we have unmarked vehicles, but their primary job is not traffic enforcement. Those unmarked units are detectives or people like myself that just drive an unmarked vehicle because I don't have patrol responsibilities. Now, one of those unmarked cars may stop you. They may see you commit a crime. But if you call 911 and talk to a dispatcher and say, this is the kind of vehicle stopping me, that dispatcher should be able to tell you that's a legitimate law enforcement unit. Because if you've called 911, you know you're talking to 911 dispatch. Also, if you want to proceed to a well-lit area, drive to a police department or to the sheriff's office before you stop. That's a legitimate argument to make sure that this is really a law enforcement officer that's stopping me. We have had persons who impersonated police officers who've bought vehicles that resemble police cruisers, Crown Victorias, and gotten blue lights. They're not that hard to acquire, and we've made arrests on that. So that's a legitimate fear. It's a legitimate concern.
What can you recommend if a woman is driving by herself and she has car trouble? What's the best? Maybe she has a flat tire. Maybe it's a little bit dark. Does she stay in her car until somebody, maybe an officer, drives by if she can't get a hold of anyone?
Well, I would suggest that, yes. As we said, worst case scenario, you can always call 911 and say, I can't get a hold of anybody. This is where I'm at. Would you send a patrol officer? That's what we're here for. That's what tax dollars pay us to do, is provide safety and protection and peace of mind. If that patrol unit shows up, if you're not able to fix your vehicle or get a tow truck en route, they'll get it on the way. You can call 911. 911 will get you a tow truck on the way. But absolutely, I would not suggest any woman, period, be on the side of the road in the dark, out of the vehicle, outside that safety zone where they can keep the doors locked. Obviously, we've all got cell phones. My 13-year-old stepson, 12-year-old daughter have cell phones. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a cell phone. But absolutely, if for some reason you don't have cell service, you can't get out, then stay in the car. As long as you're warm in the winter and cool in the summer and you're protected from the elements, just stay there. Don't risk your own personal safety.
And real quick, we talked about people who apply force, but what if there's a gun involved? I think that gives it a little bit different element if you happen to be approached by gunpoint.
Well, I would never suggest to anyone to take actions that would elevate or escalate risk to their life.